Breaking 1 minute ago, King Charles did something no British monarch has done in nearly a century, and the ripple effect is already shaking every pillar of power in London. At exactly Baden Sicherofen this morning, the Royal Press Office issued a statement so dramatic, so unvarnished, that reporters throughout Westminster were convinced it had to be fake. It wasn't. For the first time since his coronation, King Charles directly intervened in the politics of London, and his target was none other than Mayor Sadiq Khan. The breaking moment, the headline hit the airwaves before Parliament could even gather. King Charles opposes new London Charter, calls for national inquiry. Within minutes, media helicopters swarmed over Westminster. Cameramen tripped over cables. Sky News cut away from scheduled programming because this wasn't simply a royal pronouncement. It was a declaration of war on a policy that Khan called the future of British urban governance. The Crown cannot, in good conscience, allow sweeping reforms that risk alienating the heritage, tradition, and unity of this great capital, the King said in words he reportedly insisted be left unedited. The statement hit harder than anything issued by the royal family in decades. And inside City Hall, the reaction was nothing short of chaos. Sadiq Khan stunned into silence, according to multiple sources inside City Hall. Sadiq Khan was in a private strategy meeting when an aide stormed in holding a phone with the breaking alert. He read it once, then again, then dropped the phone on the table. "This is madness," Khan muttered. A senior staffer present recalled. "The king on this." He reportedly sat in stunned silence for several seconds, hands clasped, eyes wide with incredulity. This wasn't supposed to happen. A historic break with tradition. The last time a British monarch openly opposed a sitting city official was in Iten Jobai Wushisen, and even then it was behind closed doors. But King Charles broke that code today, then on purpose. According to a palace insider who spoke to the Daily Herald on condition of anonymity, the king personally rewrote the statement 5 times. He was insistent. He wanted this to land hard. "No diplomatic buffering," he said. And I quote, "The city needs to be reminded who we are." The target, the new London Charter, the flashpoint for the crisis, is something Khan has proudly touted for months. The London Charter for Social Unity. Marketed as a bold plan to restructure policing, transport funding, and private property access in inner-gen city boroughs. The plan had already generated quiet criticism, but nobody expected the royal intervention until today. This is only the beginning. What happens next could rewrite the rules of British politics and tear London apart. In City Hall, shock gave way to outrage in a matter of minutes. Sadiq Khan, visibly shaken, stood up from the table and reportedly slammed his fist against a folder full of briefing documents. "Who does he think he is?" Khan snapped, according to 2 aides present. "The monarchy doesn't run this city, we do, the people do." His voice became loud. Face or cadre, Shashamisa, angrier. Some staffers tried to reassure him, but he wasn't having any of it. Khan was no longer merely reacting to the king's words. He was preparing a fight Jan back. The mayor's office quickly arranged a news conference for Sean Wushiden within the hour. It was rushed. No teleprompter, no final script, only anger. And it showed from the moment Khan stepped up to the podium outside City Hall. Cameras belonging to the BBC, ITV and Sky News began to broadcast live across the country. His tone was raw, his eyes locked with the camera, and his opening line would go viral within minutes. "The unelected crown does not speak for the 8 million Londoners who voted for change," Khan said. "This is not the E10 Liubai Mouse." Gasps were heard from the crowd. Even the journalists lowered their microphones. This wasn't just a rebuttal, it was an open challenge, an unprecedented one. The Crown versus City Hall. No mayor in modern British history had ever spoken about the monarch in such blunt, confrontational terms. But Khan continued, and the more he spoke, the more intense he became. "What we are seeing is an attempt to hold progress back, to silence the will of this city under the weight of outdated tradition," he said. "I will not bow." Behind him, supporters cheered. Some clapped, but others, Jen, including senior Labour Party advisors, standing in the back. Jen stood frozen. They didn't applaud, for they knew what it meant. Khan had just drawn a battle line between himself and the king, and there was no going back. Downing Street stunned within minutes. News of Khan's press conference had reached into sheer Downing Street. One source described how Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who was preparing for a mid-gen morning security briefing, delayed the meeting to watch the live feed. "Is he trying to get himself sacked?" Sunak reportedly said under his breath. "No," said one advisor. "He's trying to start a movement." Phones started ringing everywhere, from every corner of Westminster, because now it wasn't just about the London Charter, it was about power and legitimacy, and who gets to decide what kind of future Britain is heading toward. And that is when the public reaction began then, not just online, but on the streets, outside the palace, outside City Hall, and soon all over London, because the people were taking sides. By Saturday, London was no longer quiet. Hundreds of citizens were already gathered in Trafalgar Square, waving Union Jacks, many carrying signs that read, "Deaf tradition matters. The King speaks for us." The chants were loud, the mood was electric. "Enough is enough," shouted one former army sergeant from Southwark. "This city belongs to the British people, not bureaucrats with agendas." Meanwhile, just a mile away near Tower Bridge, another crowd was building, this time made up of supporters of Khan, younger, louder, holding handmade placards that read, "Royal rule, et we voted for change." "The King is not my mayor," the division was stark. London had become a city at war with itself, not with weapons, but with ideas. Both sides thought their fight was a fight for the soul of Britain. Police on high alert by mid-den afternoon, the Metropolitan Police declared a tier fu sen public order risk, deploying mounted officers around Westminster and activating drone surveillance over key protest zones. An internal memo, leaked only hours later, revealed that officials had feared a potential flashpoint between the opposing sides. "We are monitoring for the risk of physical altercations, spontaneous marches, or breaches of public property," said the memo. "Political tension has gone beyond the limits of normal protest parameters." At Sawal Senden Sharafen, those fears were realized. Fists fly on the embankment. Two protesters, one in a deaf camera crews, captured the scuffle. That footage spread online within minutes, then first via Telegram, then TikTok, then mainstream media. Within the hour, it had over Ardeng lion views. The headline was everywhere. "London erupts in street battles over royal crisis." But while the public was erupting inside the palace, something even more dramatic was unfolding, because King Charles wasn't done, and what he said next would ignite a political firestorm. One even his closest advisors begged him to avoid. He never listened. It happened at exactly Sawus Sidelin Sifen, at a previously scheduled royal reception for Commonwealth education leaders at Clarence House. It was supposed to be a symbolic event, safe apolitical. Instead, King Charles walked to the podium and lit one of modern British history's most contentious royal addresses. There was no teleprompter, no press script, just the King, a lectern and a speech. He had handwritten himself the night before against the advice of every political strategist surrounding him. He paused before he began. The room was quiet. Then he spoke. "There are moments in a nation's life," Charles started, "when silence is no longer neutrality but complicity. This is one of those moments." Gasps could be heard, he added. "The traditions that bind this country, our civility, our shared values, our heritage, are not optional. They are not relics. They are the foundation, and no single official, no matter how popular or elected, may trample over them in the name of progress." The room stood frozen. Foreign dignitaries exchanged awkward glances. Reporters in the back frantically whispered into their phones. This was because the King had just drawn a line in the sand live, on record in full defiance of modern political neutrality. A royal crossing of the Rubicon immediately after the speech ended. Royal aides tried to spin it. They called it reflective, symbolic, in the spirit of unity. But it was too late. That clip had gone viral already. Within an hour, faking Charles' speech was trending at #1 in the UK and #3 globally. Reactions poured in. Nigel Farage, finally, a king who defends Britain. Piers Morgan, bold, necessary, and overdue. Labour MPs, silent, avoiding comment, some deactivating Twitter, but there was one reaction that overshadowed them all. Sadiq Khan's The Mayor strikes back online. Khan issued just one tweet at Sawawuden Shajolf, and it read, "Inherited privilege has always feared elected power. History will not be kind to those who clung to their thrones while Londoners begged for change. 17 minutes later, the tweet was gone. But screenshots had by then spread like wildfire, and the damage was done. The press now had the perfect headline: Mayor versus Monarch. Khan accuses King of anti-democratic behavior. It was no longer a policy disagreement, it was personal. And Britain could feel the ground shifting beneath its feet. Just about the time it couldn't get any worse, it did. Because less than 2 hours after Khan's now then deleted tweet made headlines, a series of explosive internal documents leaked City Hall and changed everything. Documents leaked to the Telegraph and authenticated by the Times comprised emails, internal memos, and strategy notes as far back as August. Their content was damning. As stated in one email written by Khan's senior political advisor, "We need to provoke confrontation with the monarchy. It'll energize our base and force Labour to pick a side." Another contained a draft speech never delivered titled, "Taking London Back from the Crown." A third included polling analysis that suggested conflict with royal institutions could boost Khan's approval among younger urban progressives by as much as 12%. Lone line resonated above the others. Charles is vulnerable. He wants to be liked. We force a reaction. He'll overreach. Then we own the narrative. It was political warfare, cold calculated, and now completely public. The fallout inside Labour, the leaks sent shockwaves through the Labour Party. By 7:30 p.m, 3 senior MPs publicly broke ranks with Khan over his approach. One, speaking to The Guardian, anonymously said, "He is playing with fire. Picking a fight with the monarchy for PR is not progressive. It is reckless." Another called the situation a nightmare scenario for party leadership. "We were already struggling to present unity. Now it looks like our star mayor is running a rogue campaign to turn the country against the king." Even Keir Starmer, who had been noticeably silent the entire day, couldn't hold back at 8:11 p.m. A formal statement was issued by Starmer's office. "The views expressed and strategies pursued by the Mayor of London do not reflect the position of the Labour Party. We remain committed to respectful dialogue, constitutional integrity, and democratic unity." Translation. He was on his own. Khan and the Sharks were circling. The King's revenge. King Charles was informed of the leak at his evening briefing. According to palace sources who spoke to the Daily Mail, his response: disappointed, but unsurprised. What followed would have left even seasoned royal watchers speechless. Because the king wasn't retreating, he was preparing to escalate. Arrangements were being made behind closed doors for a late-night meeting, one that hadn't happened in over 2 decades. A meeting which, under the law, would necessitate a Prime Minister's involvement. A meeting of the Privy Council at exactly 9:35 p.m. Black sedans started to arrive at Buckingham Palace through the east entrance. Inside were select members of the Privy Council, an elite constitutional advisory group to the monarch, rarely summoned for urgent matters unless the Crown perceives a national risk. Chimeras were not allowed inside. But, according to a senior political source with direct knowledge, what happened behind those doors could reshape Britain's political balance for decades. Charles stood at the head of the chamber, unflinching, formal, determined, and after brief procedural formalities, he dropped the bombshell. "I am invoking Crown consultation on the question of city governance overreach, with specific attention paid to the Mayor of London's legislative powers." Those 30 words hit the room like thunder. Crown consultation is a seldom used legal mechanism whereby the monarch can call for formal review of any regional or municipal authority believed to be acting outside its constitutional bounds. It hadn't been used in over 100 years, but King Charles just activated it against Sadiq Khan. The room froze. Even the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, reportedly went pale. As one participant said, "No one expected Charles to go that far. The symbolism alone, it's a royal warning shot, and the whole country just heard it." Already behind the palace walls, legal advisors were preparing briefs. Political analysts were calling this a nuclear option in constitutional politics. And while the action was technically symbolic, it sent a message clearer than any headline. The king thinks that Khan is overstepping his authority. The public responds violently while the Privy Council met. the mood on the streets of London continued to worsen. Crowds of protesters in Whitehall had doubled by 10 p.m. Police reported minor scuffles, broken barricades and 8 arrests. Videos published on social media showed pro-royalists and Khan supporters clashing outside Parliament as mounted officers stood caught between flying objects and angry chants. It means hashtags like Number Crowniversity, Number Monarch Gevs Mayor, and Number London Crisis surged across Twitter, TikTok and Telegram. And for the first time, international media started to cover the unrest as a full-blown constitutional crisis. CNN described the situation as the United Kingdom's most dramatic standoff between monarchy and municipal government since the Victorian era. And inside City Hall, Khan was said to be watching it all, not from a press briefing, not with his advisors, but alone in a private room, refreshing Twitter minute after minute. And it was only going to get worse because the next morning would bring a new front-page story that would finish him. The story was based on newly leaked documents, this time not from political staffers, but allegedly from inside Khan's digital strategy team. The emails, which have been authenticated by several outlets, outlined a month-long plan to provoke public confrontation with King Charles, designed specifically to galvanise progressive support, force Labour leadership into ideological loyalty, push the monarchy into a reaction that can be framed as oppressive. A particularly chilling line came from the 17th of July campaign memo. If Charles bites, we win the moment. If he stays silent, we win the message. Either way, we take the crown down a notch. The British press exploded. Within hours, the BBC, Sky News, The Guardian, and even Al Jazeera all ran segments, each with the same question: was this crisis all fabricated from the very start? Khan was deafeningly silent until 9:12 a.m. when he stepped in front of reporters, not for a full conference, not to clarify, but to give a brief 27-second response. His voice was rapid, tense, almost trembling. This so-called strategy memo was never approved, never seen by me. We run on policy, not theatrics. I have no comment beyond that. He turned and walked away. No questions, please. Reporters stunned. ITV correspondent Rachel Wilkes described the moment like this. He looked cornered, not furious, not combative, just caught. The takeaway from nearly every major outlet: the momentum was lost for Khan. The Labour Party breaks by noon. The Labour Party was openly fracturing. Those legislators who 48 hours earlier in Parliament were defending Khan were issuing carefully worded statements now, calling for calm reflection. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves went further, posting, "I respect the office of the mayor, but I respect Britain's institutions more." And that was the sound of the dam cracking. Because if Labour were to turn against Khan publicly, his position would become politically unsustainable. But it wasn't just politics any longer. It was public trust. On the streets of London, that trust was fast disappearing. By midday, London was no longer just protesting. It was revolting. In what police are now calling a synchronised citywide disturbance, several demonstrations erupted across 6 boroughs at the same time. Westminster, Hackney, Camden, Southwark, Hammersmith, Tower Hamlets. Union Jacks clashed with protest signs. Anti-monarchy slogans drowned out any pro-King chants, fireworks, smoke, shattered shop windows. The Metropolitan Police declared a Tier -4 urban escalation level for the first time since the 2011 riots. What had started as a political conflict now became a full-blown civic uprising. The people take sides in Whitehall. Thousands gathered under the statue of Winston Churchill, waving signs like, "The Crown is Britain, kick Khan out, monarchy over mob rule." Meanwhile, Brixton and Bethnal Green saw counter-protests ignited, organised over private telegram groups online. One home flyer read, "The King doesn't pay our rent power to the people." Not the palace's journalists tried to cover both sides, but found themselves caught between screaming matches, physical altercations and flying debris. At least 12 people were injured, including 3 police officers, and 26 arrests were made into the late afternoon. Transport for London has suspended several underground lines. Sirens blared across central boroughs in states of emergency. And Westminster was put under a soft lockdown. The internet takes sides too online. The war was raging even harder. Hashtags trended globally. Number London on fire, number crowns Khan, number Khan Rezo, number defend the crown. Twitter, FAX erupted with reaction videos, memes and real-time footage showing clashes near Parliament Square. YouTube streams with titles like Live from London Chaos reached over 1 million concurrent viewers. TikTok creators posted side-by-side clips of King Charles' speech and Khan's outburst, inviting viewers to vote with likes and comments. The sentiment was clear. People weren't just watching, they were taking sides, and the numbers were astonishing. A snap poll by Ipsos Mori showed 64% supported the King's intervention, only 21% supported Khan's stance. 15% remained undecided, but said they were deeply concerned by the mayor's behaviour. But one number stood out more than any poll, own 100,000. That is how many people were expected to gather for a Defend the Crown march scheduled for Saturday. It was billed by organisers as the largest pro-monarchy demonstration in British history, and City Hall had no plan to contain it, for within Khan's office, things had gotten worse, much worse. Toxicity filled the air inside the glass walls of City Hall, where once senior aides were whispering, they were now shouting, the phones were ringing, messages flooding in. But no one knew who was still loyal to who. It is open warfare in here. Khan's circle is fractured. Half the room wants him to apologise. The other half wants him to double down, and he is listening to neither. According to multiple insiders, the Deputy Mayor, Sophie Linden, threatened to quit, slamming her notebook on the conference table during an emergency briefing. He's taken this too far, she allegedly yelled. This is not reform, it is political suicide. Another advisor, unnamed, but described as a veteran loyalist, was overheard saying, he's not leading anymore, he's reacting, and reacting badly. Rumours began swirling that a draft of the resignation had been quietly prepared, not for release, but just in case. Meanwhile, internal Labour Party channels lit up with crisis chatter. Roan Labour MP reportedly circulated the following WhatsApp message: "We can't carry him anymore. If we do, we go down with him." One by one, Khan's political allies started to break away, issuing statements with vague overtones of restoring the trust, reuniting the city, and respecting institutions. But not one of them mentioned the name of Khan. Even former supporters who had stood beside him on diversity platforms were now ducking interviews, because no one wanted to be in the blast radius of a politician on the brink. The mayor vanishes from public view by 5 p.m. Something even more unsettling happened. Sadiq Khan vanished. He cancelled all evening appearances, switched his phone off, went silent on social media, and City Hall staff say locked himself in his private office, refusing to take calls from Starmer, the deputy mayor, or even crisis advisors. One aide described him as completely unresponsive, staring at his laptop, refreshing Twitter every few minutes. Another said, he's not planning, he's not leading, he's just watching it all collapse around him. And in the background, the clock was ticking. Because tomorrow, Parliament would open with a motion of no confidence. And this time, it wasn't symbolic, it was real. Next morning, Parliament was full. MPs from all corners of the UK filed into the chamber for what one political analyst called the most consequential debate about a sitting mayor in British history. At the heart of it, a formal no-confidence motion against Sadiq Khan, tabled by a Conservative MP, but backed by increasing numbers across Labour. Outside, the protests hadn't stopped. If anything, they'd grown louder. Trafalgar Square was overflowing. Hundreds of thousands waving flags and chanting as police struggled to manage the crowds. Buses rerouted, shops closed. Central London was on lockdown. News helicopters hovered above like vultures inside Westminster. However, another kind of tempest was brewing. One by one, MPs took the floor. Some defended the mayor, laying the blame on a media frenzy and royal overreach. But the majority turned against him, not for his policies, but for what they call a reckless and premeditated war against the crown. Then came the numbers. And they told a brutal story: knife crime up 28% since Khan's last re-election. Average rent highest on record in London. Public trust in the mayor's office down to 22%. Trust in the monarchy up to 74%. Then came the final blow from a voice that had remained silent the entire time through this crisis, that of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Taking the floor with calm but forceful authority, he said, "This moment is bigger than politics, bigger than partisanship." When tradition is assailed as ambitions personal, when chaos is stirred, not by accident but by design, then silence is no longer an option. I second this motion. The chamber fell silent, and then the vote began. 321 in favour, 017 against 4 abstained. The motion passed. Sadiq Khan had lost the confidence of Parliament, not legally binding, but politically it was a death sentence. Less than an hour later, Khan's office released a terse, fatigued statement. In light of the events of late, I am stepping away from all public duties until further notice. No apology, no press conference, just silence. A mayor falls, a king rises. The protests were calming as the dusk settled over London. Crowds thinned gradually, barricades came down, and from the balcony of Buckingham Palace, King Charles appeared just for a moment to wave silently at the crowd below. For many, that was the closure they needed. For others, it was only the beginning of a larger cultural war, one that still brewed beneath the surface. But one thing was certain, it would be a week that would never be forgotten, the moment when a monarch drew a line and the nation stepped behind him. So what do you think? Was King Charles right to intervene? Did Sadiq Khan go too far? Or is this just the first chapter in a much bigger political reckoning? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you want the full truth mainstream won't tell you, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, and be ready for tomorrow when we release the leaked footage of Parliament trying to suppress it. And what that portends about the next political explosion in Britain will shock you. At 6:42 the following morning, newsstands across the UK displayed a headline that no politician ever wants to see. Khan new leaks reveal strategic attack on the monarchy. The Times, London.